Why did the transmission sound so real? The words cut through the static like a blade, trembling, desperate, too raw to belong in a controlled military exercise. Phoenix 7 to base. We are surrounded. Ammunition critical. Does anyone copy? The night outside Fort Bragg was pitch black. No moon, no comfort, no sound but the hum of electricity and the soft hiss of rain against glass. Inside the sterile communications room, three technicians froze mid-conversation, unsure if they'd just heard a mistake or something far worse. Protocol demanded they report it. Command had ordered radio silence. And so they hesitated. In the corner, a woman who wasn't supposed to be listening did. Morgan Reed sat with her back straight, her posture trained into muscle memory from years of service. The light above her flickered once, a pulse that illuminated the hollow fatigue beneath her eyes. Her uniform was regulation neat, the insignia on her collar still gleaming though it carried the quiet shame of demotion. She'd worn it for 3 years, long enough to get used to the weight, but not long enough to forget the reason. She turned slightly, pretending to adjust her headset. The transmission repeated, more broken this time, the voice splintered with panic. Phoenix 7 to base, we need immediate support. Live rounds, repeat they're firing live. Static swallowed the rest. Morgan's heart stopped. A training exercise never used live ammunition. Never. She leaned closer, listening to the hiss between signals. Every instinct she'd buried for 3 years stirred awake, the instincts of a sniper, of a soldier trained to hear meaning in silence. "Ma'am," one of the technicians called to her, uncertain. Was that part of the simulation? Morgan didn't answer. Her hand hovered over her transmitter. If she pressed that switch, she'd break protocol again. If she didn't, 12 men could die while headquarters debated paperwork. Her pulse quickened. Afghanistan replayed in her mind, the same hesitation, the same rules, the same cold bureaucracy that had cost her 3 brothers in arms and her career. Not again. She pressed the switch. "This is Morgan Reed," she said, her voice low, steady. "I'm not on the combat roster, but I'm listening." The silence that followed stretched so long it hurt. Then a crackle, a voice breaking through, sharp with relief. "Reed, thank God, we're pinned down in Sector 5. Valley position. 3 hostiles converging, they're not part of the drill. These rounds are live, ma'am, something's wrong." Morgan rose from her chair, already reaching for her sidearm before her brain caught up to her body. "Hold your position," she said quietly. "I'll alert command." But when she turned, the door opened. Lieutenant Colonel Amanda Wallace stood there, calm, steel-eyed, unreadable. Her gray hair glinted under the harsh light as she gestured for Morgan to follow. No words, just that look. The kind only career soldiers shared when orders collided with conscience. In the hallway, away from listening ears, Wallace spoke. "You heard the call?" "Yes, ma'am." Wallace's tone was low, controlled. "Intel just flagged unusual chatter inside the exercise zone, not ours. Civilian bands encrypted, non-military, possibly terrorist." The word hung there like smoke. "Terrorists," Morgan repeated, "inside a controlled exercise." Wallace nodded grimly. "That's the assessment, and we can't confirm anything without evidence. Command won't act unless I can prove it." Morgan's jaw tightened. "So, while they wait for proof, Phoenix 7 bleeds out in the woods." "Exactly." Wallace looked at her for a long moment, the kind of look that felt like a test and a confession all at once. "You're not cleared for combat ops, Reed. Not since Afghanistan. But I came to tell you I'll be in command trying to convince people who won't listen. And I won't notice if you're not in the comm room for the next 4 hours." Morgan understood instantly. Plausible deniability, the military's favorite mercy. Wallace turned to leave but paused. "One more thing, Thomas Hayes is with Phoenix 7. Morgan froze. The name hit her like a rifle butt to the chest. Thomas Hayes, son of Captain James Hayes, the man who'd ended her career, the man who had called her reckless, insubordinate, dangerous, the man whose approval she'd once craved like air. Her throat tightened. "Understood, ma'am." Wallace's voice softened, almost maternal. "You've got 4 hours, Morgan. After that, I'll have to report you as AWOL." The colonel walked away. Morgan didn't. She turned toward the eastern wing, the armory. The smell of gun oil and cold steel was like coming home to a life she wasn't supposed to remember. The armory lights buzzed faintly as she stepped inside, her boots echoing against the concrete floor. Behind a metal desk sat William Hargrove, Old Man Winter, as the younger soldiers called him. His white hair glowed like frost under the light, his eyes a piercing blue that had seen too much. He didn't look up from his paperwork. "Bit late for inventory checks, isn't it, Reed?" "I need my rifle, Bill." That made him look up, slow, deliberate. His expression didn't change, but the air shifted. "Your rifle was decommissioned when you were reassigned. And we both know it's still here," Morgan said quietly, "with my modifications intact." Bill leaned back in his creaking chair. "And why would I know such a specific detail?" "Because you don't throw away good weapons," she replied. "And because you're the best damn armorer this base ever had." Silence stretched. Then she added softly, "Phoenix 7's in trouble, real trouble, live rounds, commands paralyzed." Bill tapped his finger on the desk, his tell. "Trouble registered." "You're going out there?" "Yes." He studied her. The lines in his face looked carved from stone. "Unauthorized mission, unauthorized weapon. 3 years after your last one nearly got you court-martialed." She didn't blink. "I'm not asking for permission." Bill sighed, then stood with the slow dignity of age and experience. "Follow me." They walked down the armory's long aisle, past rows of rifles lined in perfect symmetry. At the back, he entered a code on a metal door and stepped into the special storage section. Inside, the air was different, colder, sacred. He stopped at a cabinet, spun a combination lock and opened it. There it was. Her rifle, M485 Precision Sniper System, matte black, hand-modified, scope balanced to her breath, the stock fitted to her shoulder like a ghost of muscle memory. Morgan's chest ached. "You maintained it." Bill shrugged. "Good equipment deserves respect, even when its operator doesn't." He handed it to her gently, like a father returning a relic. Then he said quietly, "You know I served with your father, Thomas Reed, Gulf War. He saved my life in Iraq." Morgan froze. "You knew my father?" Bill nodded, eyes distant. "He'd be proud of you." Her throat closed. She hadn't heard those words in decades. Bill reached again into the cabinet, pulled out a leather case and opened it. Inside lay a combat knife, worn, balanced, deadly beautiful. "His," Bill said simply. Morgan took it with reverence, her reflection faint on the blade. Then his tone changed. "You know, Reed, your instincts, they're like his. You feel danger before it shows itself. Trust them." She nodded, slinging the rifle over her shoulder. "What about the comms?" Bill smiled faintly and handed her a battered old radio. "Cold War SATCOM unit. Outdated enough to be invisible to modern scanners. You can listen without being heard." Morgan checked her watch. The night outside was slipping away, and with it, Phoenix 7's time. "I need to move," she said. Bill handed her a folded map, marked with inked lines. "If I were a sniper, I'd take this ridge," he said, tapping it. "Good elevation, clear visibility." Morgan studied it. "How will you explain the missing rifle?" He smiled. "Inventory errors happen, and I'm retiring next month." She tightened the strap on her bag. "Thank you." Bill's gaze softened. "Your father used to say, sometimes the right orders don't come from above, they come from within." She held his eyes for a long moment, then nodded. As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her once more. "Reed, make your shots count." The drive was silent. Pine trees blurred past her headlights as the Appalachian foothills rose ahead, ghostly in the fog. The truck's tires crunched over gravel roads leading to the Red Cell training grounds, terrain she knew like the back of her hand. Morgan killed the engine 3 miles from the perimeter and stepped out. The air was cold, the kind of cold that cleared thought and sharpened memory. She pulled on her dark tactical gear, her movements precise, methodical, practiced. The weight of the rifle against her back felt right, natural, like gravity itself had been waiting for her to reclaim it. She moved through the forest silently, a shadow among shadows. Her night vision goggles painted the world in spectral green. Every rustle, every branch, every whisper of wind told her a story. Then voices. She froze behind an oak, heartbeat slowing to silence. 2 men ahead, 30 yards, moving like ghosts through the fog. Perimeter sensors in place. Team reports targets contained in Sector 5. Extraction scheduled 300, one said, accent faint but unmistakably Eastern European. Russians. So it was true. This wasn't a drill gone wrong. It was an infiltration. Morgan waited, unmoving, until their voices faded. Then she changed course, moving low and fast toward the ridge marked on Bill's map. The climb was brutal, steep rock, wet moss, aching fingers. Halfway up, a stone slipped under her boot, clattering into the dark. She froze, every nerve screaming alert. Nothing. No response. She continued upward. At the top, she found her spot, a narrow plateau overlooking the valley below. Through the mist, the world opened like a secret. She laid out her mat, assembled her rifle in silence. Each click and twist was a heartbeat, each adjustment a memory of what she used to be. Then she peered through her scope. There, movement in the rocks below. 7 figures huddled in formation, defensive posture, low ammo. Phoenix 7. And surrounding them, 3 converging forces. One looked organized, one chaotic, one precise. Mercenaries, militants, and professionals. Her breath slowed. She adjusted the scope. The team leader, Thomas Hayes. His stance was his father's, proud and unyielding. Her finger hovered over the trigger. No, not yet. She needed to see who was coordinating the attack. Then she found him, a commander standing apart giving silent orders, 800 yards, crosswind 5 knots. She took a slow breath. The world shrank to the space between heartbeat and trigger. And then thunder. The shot cracked across the valley. The commander dropped. Confusion rippled through the attackers. One down. She shifted again, eyes hunting. Found another, a communications coordinator. Calculated, fired. Another down. Through her scope, the tide shifted. Phoenix 7 had an opening. She keyed her radio. Phoenix 7, this is Overwatch. Move northwest 30 degrees. Break in perimeter, move now. Silence, then unidentified shooter. Identify yourself. Not relevant, she whispered. Move now. She watched through the scope as Thomas signaled his team. They broke through the western side, vanishing into the fog. Morgan exhaled. Relief, control, focus. Phase 1 complete. But before she could pack up, a glint caught her eye. A reflection. Scope glare. Another sniper. She rolled right, just as a bullet shattered the rock where her head had been. The war she thought she'd left behind had just found her again. And somewhere in the dark, another ghost was looking through a scope, hunting her. The shot echoed across the ridge like thunder trapped in stone. Morgan pressed herself flat against the cold earth, feeling the shockwave ripple through her bones. A heartbeat later, the sound reached her, sharp, violent, close. The rock behind her was chipped and smoking. Someone out there had eyes on her, someone good. She exhaled once, slow and silent. Her fingers traced the rifle's edge as she shifted her weight, scanning the mist-shrouded ridge opposite her. The forest below was still, too still. No movement, no sound, only fog crawling through the valley like breath from a sleeping beast. Then she saw it, a faint shimmer of metal, a reflection maybe half a second long before it vanished into the darkness. Scope. Another sniper. Her instincts sharpened into focus. She wasn't the only one providing overwatch tonight. Whoever he was, he'd spotted her muzzle flash the moment she fired to cover Phoenix 7. Now it was a duel, unseen, patient, fatal. Morgan crawled backward, slow and deliberate, staying below the ridge line. A second bullet hit near her shoulder, throwing dust into her face. Too accurate to be random. He was tracking her movement. She froze, brain racing. How? Her eyes darted across her gear, and then she saw it. A small patch of reflective metal on the clasp of her rifle case, catching what little light the mist refracted. She rubbed mud over it, masking the shine. Then she waited, heart steady, mind calm. If he was any good, he'd expect her to reposition, which meant he'd adjust too. It was a game now: move, wait, anticipate. Morgan reached into her pack, pulling out her jacket. She draped it over her rifle case, shaping it to look like a prone body, then crawled 20 yards east through low brush to a depression between rocks. From there, she could see the decoy without being seen herself. Minutes crawled, her world narrowed to breath and heartbeat. Then movement. A faint shift in the fog on the opposite ridge. Someone repositioning. A silhouette against the pale mist, subtle but visible for an instant. The barrel of a rifle angled toward her decoy. She drew a slow breath, calculated wind, distance, angle. 900 yards. Her finger tightened. The trigger broke. Her rifle barked once. Through the scope, she saw the enemy sniper's body jolt, his weapon tumbling from his grasp. Silence followed, deep, consuming. One clean shot. She didn't smile. There was nothing to celebrate in taking a life, even one that hunted her. Morgan dismantled her rifle quickly, every motion mechanical. The sound of her own breathing was the only thing keeping her tethered to the moment. She needed to move, that shot would echo for miles. She was sliding her weapon into its case when a faint crunch of boots on gravel froze her. Behind her. She pivoted instantly, sidearm raised, breath steady. "I know you're there," a voice said softly. Male, calm, controlled. "And based on that shooting, I'm guessing you're not one of the bad guys." Her finger tightened on the trigger. "Identify yourself." A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, broad-shouldered, hands raised. His tactical gear was civilian, unmarked, the kind favored by private contractors. His voice carried familiarity, something she couldn't place. "Name, Townsend," he said. "Michael Townsend, private security attached to this exercise." The name hit her like a slow, sinking realization. Michael Townsend, Delta Force operative. The man she'd saved in Afghanistan. The man she'd broken orders for. The reason her career had died. He stepped closer, recognition dawning in his eyes. "Morgan Reed, I'll be damned." For a second, neither of them spoke. Only the forest, the mist, and the weight of 3 years of silence between them. "You're the last person I expected to find out here," he said finally. "I could say the same." Morgan lowered her weapon but didn't holster it. "Last I heard, you left the service." "I did," he replied. "Private sector now. My team was hired to augment the opposition forces for this training exercise. Only something's wrong. Some of these guys aren't mine, and they're not using blanks." Morgan nodded slowly. "I've seen them, professional, Russian training." Townsend's jaw clenched. "Then it's true. I tried raising command, but half the comms channels are jammed." "Which means Nightshade," Morgan said automatically. He blinked. "You know about Nightshade?" "Enough. Command told me it was a simple red cell drill, but the chatter I intercepted." "Wasn't American," he finished. "Yeah, I've been tracking them for an hour. These aren't random infiltrators. They're organized, and they're converging on something." He crouched beside her, pulling out a small digital map. The terrain flickered on the screen, green lines, red dots. They're moving toward the command bunker in the north sector. That's where the prototype's stored. Morgan studied the map, eyes narrowing. And they're going to take it. That's the idea. Silence fell again. The fog pressed close. For the first time in 3 years, she was back in the same rhythm as Afghanistan, 2 operators alone, outnumbered, improvising. Except this time, she wasn't saving him out of guilt. She was saving everyone. Townsend looked at her, something unspoken flickering in his eyes. You know, I tried to find you after that mission, to tell you it wasn't your fault. She didn't answer. Her gaze stayed fixed on the dark valley below. You saved my life, he continued. But that ambush, it wasn't random. We were placed there. Somebody wanted you to break orders. Morgan turned toward him slowly. You're saying it was a setup. I'm saying someone fed compromised intel to draw out an Overwatch sniper, to expose you. His voice was steady, but his eyes burned with quiet anger. Same tactics I'm seeing tonight. Her stomach turned cold, the same pattern, the same hands. And suddenly, the name Wallace had whispered hours ago made sense. Petrov. Morgan's pulse steadied, her focus returning. If the Russians are after Nightshade, then Petrov's behind it. Townsend frowned. You know him. I met him once through a scope. Townsend didn't ask how that meeting ended. He just nodded. Then we find him before he finds that device. He started to move, but she caught his arm. Mike, well, if you're right, this isn't just about stolen tech. It's about infiltration. Someone on our side buried the truth in Afghanistan, and now they're giving Petrov another shot. He looked at her, voice quiet. Then we end it this time. For a moment, they were just 2 ghosts in a war no one else knew existed. Morgan exhaled. What's the plan? Townsend studied the dark slope ahead. Command bunkers a mile north. We'll move parallel to the ridge line. You provide overwatch. I'll recon the perimeter. Sniper cover only, she said firmly. If you go down there, you're a target. He gave her a faint smile, the same reckless one she remembered from Afghanistan. Always was. Morgan rolled her eyes but followed. Then let's move. The forest thickened as they advanced north, every step muffled by pine needles and mist. The fog swallowed sound, their breath merging with the wind. They moved like memories, silent, deliberate. Twice they froze as patrols passed, once a confused group of American trainees, once 3 mercenaries speaking Russian. When the enemy patrol vanished into the dark, Townsend murmured, Siberian accent, former Spetsnaz, contractors, not official military. Which means plausible deniability, Morgan said. He glanced at her. You always did read the map between the lines. They continued upward until the trees thinned. Ahead, the land leveled into the northern sector, a broad plateau with artificial lighting from the distant bunker. Morgan raised her scope. The bunker sat half buried in the hillside, ringed with guards. To an outsider, it looked like any other training facility. But she could see it, the subtle differences. Extra security cameras, reinforced entry, real hardware, not simulation props. Nightshade's here, she whispered. Townsend checked his watch. We have 15 minutes before they start exfiltrating it. She adjusted her position, scanning ridges. Sniper overwatch from here. You go recon. Give me signal when you move on the western side. He nodded. You see anyone without infrared tags, they're hostiles. Morgan watched him melt into the mist, his form vanishing between trees. She turned her attention back to her rifle, calibrating her scope to the faint light spilling from the bunker's entrance. The world narrowed to the sightline, and the pulse in her fingertips. Through the lens, the night breathed. 2 military police at the door, a guard tower 40 meters west, and movement, a shadow in the underbrush 200 yards out. She focused. 3 figures in dark tactical gear, Russian formation. Perfect cover, perfect sight line to the bunker entrance. She marked them mentally, waiting. Minutes passed. She swept to the northwest ridge and froze. There, another rifle barrel sliding into position. Second sniper team. Townsend had been right. She whispered into her mic, 2 shooters, northwest ridge, 400 meters above bunker, coordinated with the assault team below. Static, no reply, comms interference. She exhaled. All right, we do this my way. The bunker door opened. A man stepped out, uniform crisp, movement sharp. Captain James Hayes. Her chest constricted. Even from this distance, she recognized the posture, unyielding, righteous. The man who had called her reckless. The man who'd stripped her of the thing she loved most. And now he was walking straight into a sniper's crosshairs. Her mind flickered through choices. Let him fall, poetic justice, or act. Her father's words and Bill echoed in her head. Sometimes the right orders don't come from above. They come from within. Morgan steadied her aim. Wind, distance, elevation, perfect. The Russian sniper's rifle flashed. She fired. Her bullet found its mark first. The Russian went down hard, tumbling out of sight. The second sniper scrambled, disoriented. Morgan fired again, pinning him down. Below, chaos erupted. Hayes hit the ground, shouting orders. Guards scrambled for cover. Sirens blared. Townsend used the confusion to slip around the perimeter, his shadow vanishing near the supply depot. Morgan shifted focus, tracking Russian movement. The assault team abandoned position, withdrawing east. She held fire, letting them go. Better to let the rats run home, so she could find their nest later. She dismantled her rifle, heart pounding. The shots would bring more enemies. As she rose to move, the crackle of gunfire exploded behind her, 2 mercenaries closing in. She dropped flat, drew her sidearm, waited. One passed within 5 yards. She fired twice, 2 silent hits. The second merc shouted, returning fire wildly. She ducked behind a boulder, then countered with precise rhythm, 1 breath, 1 shot. Silence. Morgan exhaled, then a voice in her earpiece, faint through static. Reed, it's Townsend. I'm inside the bunker, east entrance through the supply depot. Get here now. She moved. Through the smoke and sirens, through the forest of flashing lights and shouting soldiers, Morgan Reed descended into the heart of the chaos, into the same kind of fire that had once broken her. This time, she wasn't running from it. This time, she was walking straight into it. Why was the alarm still screaming when everything else had gone silent? Morgan slipped through the supply depot's half-open door, pistol raised, boots barely touching the concrete. The metallic echo of the alarm ricocheted through the hallways, shrill, panicked, mechanical. Red emergency lights pulsed against steel walls, turning the air into a heartbeat. Townsend, she whispered. A shadow detached itself from the far end of the room. He stepped forward, rifle low, expression tight. You took your time. Had company. He didn't ask. He didn't need to. The streak of dirt across her cheek and the faint scent of gunpowder spoke for her. What's the situation? She asked, scanning the corridor. The device isn't where it's supposed to be, he said. Nightshade's secure vault is empty. Whatever going on here, it's inside, not outside. Morgan frowned. Internal compromise. Exactly. They moved deeper into the bunker. Every few yards, the red glow cut through the dark, flashing on old military posters that looked like ghosts frozen in time. Integrity. Honor. Duty. The irony didn't go unnoticed. When they reached the lower hall, Townsend motioned for silence. Voices ahead, one calm, one panicked. Morgan moved closer, her steps inaudible. The words were faint but clear enough. I told you, I need more time, you can't just. Time over, Petrov wants results. Her blood ran cold. Petrov. She looked at Townsend, his eyes hardened. Without a word, they positioned themselves, he flanking left, she crouching right. 3 count. On 0, they moved. Morgan burst through the doorway, pistol aimed. The man at the console froze, middle-aged, glasses askew, hands hovering over a glowing keyboard. The other man spun toward her, weapon half-raised, wearing Russian-issue tactical gear. Her reflexes fired first, 2 shots precise, non-lethal shoulder and thigh. The guard dropped with a grunt. Townsend was already on the technician, slamming him against the console with one arm pinned behind his back. U.S. facility, Russian guard. Start talking, he said, voice low and cold. I had no choice, the man stammered. They have my family. Morgan's chest tightened. Who? Petrov, the technician gasped. Viktor Petrov. The name settled in the air like a curse. Townsend's grip didn't loosen. You're working for him. I'm fixing what he forced me to break. The man's voice cracked, desperate. Please, you have to believe me. He sent me photos of my wife, my daughter. Said if I didn't modify the algorithms, they'd die. Morgan stepped closer. What modifications? The technician hesitated, trembling. Townsend slammed him lightly into the console again. What modifications? Nightshade identifies communications, friendly or hostile, through encryption patterns. I changed it so Russian military frequencies are flagged as friendly. They'll move freely through our networks while ours jam. Morgan felt cold fury rise through her. You created a backdoor. He nodded miserably. Worse than that. It transmits everything intercepted, troop positions, nuclear codes, anything, to a hidden server. If Petrov gets away with this version, America won't even know it's blind. Townsend's grip eased just slightly. Can you undo it? Yes, but he's watching. I'm supposed to signal when the job's done. If I don't, he'll know. Morgan and Townsend exchanged a glance. That old, wordless battlefield understanding. Townsend said, then you send the signal. The man blinked in confusion. You want me to? Make him believe it worked, Morgan cut in. Let him come for it. The technician swallowed hard. He'll send an extraction team. Exactly, Morgan said. We'll be waiting. Townsend released him. What's your name? Dr. Keller, systems engineer, defense contractor. Morgan softened her tone just enough to keep him steady. Dr. Keller, can you build a decoy? He nodded weakly. Yes, there are prototype shells for fitting tests. Identical exterior, empty inside. Good, she said. Make one now. Keller's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up schematics. His hands shook as he worked, the red lights painting him in waves of terror. Townsend turned to Morgan. We'll need proof before we can bring Hayes in. He won't believe this without it. She grimaced. He never believed anything I said before. Then we give him something he can't ignore. Morgan looked around the room, rows of servers humming quietly, the faint vibration running through the floor like a living heartbeat. She could feel Petrov's reach here, cold, efficient, precise. He'd always preferred manipulation to chaos. How long until they extract? She asked Keller. He glanced at the clock on the console. He told me to signal by 2:30. That's in 20 minutes. Townsend checked his watch. Then that's when we move. Morgan nodded and reached for her SATCOM radio. She dialed to the old analog frequency Bill Hargrove had given her. The signal crackled to life after a few seconds. Reed, Bill's voice came through, steady, gravel low. Talk to me. Petrov's here, confirmed. We've got his inside man, compromised contractor named Keller. Nightshade's been altered. Russian forces on site. Bill's silence lasted a long beat. You have proof. Working on it. Petrov's extraction team's inbound in 20 minutes. We'll intercept. Can you reach command? I can try. Hayes has locked down comms. He thinks all this is friendly fire from the exercise. He's not buying any of it. Morgan hesitated. Tell him it's connected to Afghanistan. Say that again. Tell him the high-value target who escaped my mission was Viktor Petrov. Her voice was steady but quiet, and that my report was altered before it reached him. Bill exhaled slowly. That's a hell of a card to play. It's the truth. All right, he said. I'll try, but if Hayes doesn't believe me, then we end it ourselves. The line went dead. Townsend gave her a sidelong look. Afghanistan. Petrov was there, she said. Same tactics, same ambush. I was supposed to take the shot, but the moment I fired, everything went wrong. 3 men died, my report vanished. He studied her for a moment, and Hayes blamed you. Morgan didn't answer. She didn't need to. Keller spoke suddenly, snapping their attention back. The decoy's ready, and I've reversed the algorithm changes on the real system. It's clean. Good, Townsend said. Send the signal. Keller typed the final command, his breathing quickening. A soft chime sounded from the console. It's done. Morgan leaned over his shoulder. The message on the screen glowed faintly. Modification complete. System verified, ready for extraction. The reply came faster than any of them expected. A simple line of text. Acknowledged, team en route, rendezvous in 30 minutes, sector east. Keller's voice shook. That's the access road near the tree line. Morgan looked to Townsend. Perfect. Vehicles can reach it, they'll have to expose themselves. Townsend nodded. We hit them there, capture Petrov, end this. Keller's hands clenched. And my family. Morgan turned to him, meeting his eyes. We'll find them, that's a promise. She didn't add the truth, that promises made in war were just hopes spoken aloud. The corridor trembled as another alarm kicked in louder, closer. Hayes's men were moving through the facility now, sweeping rooms, tightening security. Time up, Townsend said. We can't use the main exits, too many eyes. Keller hesitated. There's a service tunnel, maintenance access, level B east wing, leads to the generator building outside the fence. Show us, Morgan ordered. They moved quickly, Morgan taking point, Townsend covering the rear, Keller clutching the decoy case like it held his heartbeat. The tunnels twisted downward, deeper into the earth, lined with flickering lights and the smell of metal. Morgan's senses sharpened. Every sound was amplified, their footsteps, Keller's ragged breathing, the hum of distant power lines. Halfway through, Townsend raised a fist. Stop. A red light blinked above them, motion sensor. They've upgraded security, Keller whispered. That's new. If we trigger it, we'll have company in seconds. Morgan studied it. Narrow corridor, 10-foot span. No way to crawl under or climb over without breaking the beam. We need a distraction, she said. Townsend reached into his vest and produced a small cylindrical device. Flashbang, low yield, should redirect their response. He handed it to her, but she shook her head. You said it, I'll stay with Keller. He nodded once, then backtracked silently into the shadows. Morgan waited, pulse steady. She watched Keller's trembling hands, his face pale under the flickering light. You have family? She asked quietly. He nodded. Little girl, 9 years old, loves drawing horses. My wife teaches history. His eyes glistened. They didn't do anything wrong. None of them ever do, she murmured. A dull thump echoed in the distance, the flashbang. Seconds later, alarms screamed again, but farther away this time. Townsend reappeared, breath even. Now. They sprinted. The sensor blinked red as they passed, but the system was already flooded with false alarms. By the time security teams realized, they'd be long gone. The tunnel ended at a reinforced door. Keller swiped his card and they emerged into the generator building, a cavern of machinery and cold air. Only one guard was present, startled by the noise. Morgan strode toward him, her voice firm. Security breach in the main bunker. All personnel are being redirected. She flashed Keller's badge. Move. The guard didn't even question her. Yes, ma'am, he hurried out. Townsend gave her a faint grin. Still got it. Never lost it. They exited into the night. The air was colder now, dawn still hours away. The fence shimmered with frost in the floodlights 50 yards ahead. "There'll be patrols," Townsend warned. "Then we move fast." They slipped through shadows, ducking behind maintenance sheds until the patrol passed. Morgan incapacitated both guards with silent, efficient strikes, not killing, just removing obstacles. Townsend cut through the chain-link fence with wire cutters. One by one, they crawled through to the other side, swallowed by the trees. Keller collapsed briefly, panting. "How far?" "2 miles east," Townsend said. "We reach the rendezvous before they do." Morgan adjusted the rifle on her shoulder. "And end this before anyone else dies." They started moving, 3 shadows against the endless dark. The forest ahead was a maze of wet earth and whispering wind. Somewhere out there, Viktor Petrov was coming for his prize, for his deception, for the echo of a war that had never ended. And this time, Morgan Reed wasn't a scapegoat. She was the ghost coming for him. What did courage sound like when you were out of breath? Morgan's lungs burned as they pushed through the forest, 3 silhouettes cutting across wet ground, every step swallowed by fog. The night had a rhythm now. Heartbeats, wind, the click of distant rifles. Each sound layered into the same tense symphony she remembered from every battlefield she swore she'd left behind. "Rendezvous just ahead," Townsend murmured. He paused, scanning the tree line with night vision. Thermal signatures, 4, maybe 5. SUV with blackout plates. Morgan crouched beside him, steadying her breath. "Extraction team." "Petrov." "Too soon to tell." Keller knelt behind them, clutching the decoy case like a lifeline. His whisper trembled. "If he's here, he'll want proof I finished the job." "Then we give him a performance he won't forget," Morgan said quietly. Townsend turned to her, concern flickering behind the calm. "You sure about this? If he recognizes you?" "He won't, not in this light, and if he does, he'll see the woman he thinks he destroyed." She checked the magazine on her sidearm. "That's a mistake I'll let him make." They waited in the stillness, letting the fog roll lower. Morgan touched the cold metal of her father's knife on her thigh holster, a silent reminder of purpose. Townsend whispered, 2 minutes to arrival. We move when the headlights crest that ridge." Morgan nodded. "Let them think Keller alone." She slipped into the shadows, circling wide. Townsend stayed close enough to cover her from a parallel position, rifle ready. Keller stood in the open clearing, trembling but resolute, the decoy case at his feet. Moments later, the faint rumble of engines broke the silence. 2 black SUVs emerged through the mist, headlights cutting pale cones through the trees. They stopped 20 meters from Keller. Doors opened with mechanical precision. 5 men stepped out, 4 in unmarked tactical gear, and 1 in a gray trench coat. "Viktor Petrov." Morgan felt her chest tighten at the sight. He looked older than she remembered, lines deeper, hair silvered, but the eyes were the same. Glacial blue, calculating, unhurried. He moved like someone who'd never had to run because others did it for him. Keller called out, voice shaking. "I completed the upload, the system's yours." Petrov smiled thinly. "Duh, you are a man of your word." He approached slowly, boots crunching over frost. "Open it." Keller hesitated, looking toward the case. His hands trembled just enough to be believable. Morgan held her breath, finger resting on her trigger. "Now," Petrov ordered. Keller knelt and unlatched the case. The lid opened with a faint hiss, revealing the gleaming metal shell of the decoy. Petrov's expression didn't change. He leaned closer, inspecting it. "Beautiful," he murmured. "Do you know what this means, Doctor?" Keller tried to steady his voice. "It means you get what you wanted." Petrov's gaze flicked up, faint amusement in his tone. "No, it means your country will never see another war coming until it's already over." He gestured. 2 of his men stepped forward, rifles low. 1 scanned the trees, area clear. Morgan felt her heartbeat rise. They were almost inside her range. Townsend's voice crackled faintly in her earpiece. 2 tangos right, 1 rear security. Petrov dead center, on your mark. She whispered back, negative, not yet. She needed Petrov to talk, to confirm what she already suspected. Keller swallowed. You'll let them go, my family. Petrov smiled, a small practiced lie. Of course. Then, almost tenderly, he reached out and touched the side of Keller's face. You have served well, doctor. Morgan saw the shift in Petrov's other hand. Subtle, efficient, the silenced pistol rising like an afterthought. Her instincts screamed. Keller down, she shouted through comms. Too late, the shot was whisper quiet. Keller jerked once, eyes wide, and collapsed beside the open case. Townsend's rifle barked a heartbeat later. 1 mercenary dropped. Morgan fired simultaneously, her bullet catching the rear guard before he could react. Chaos detonated. Petrov dove for cover behind the SUV, barking orders in Russian. Muzzle flashes lit the fog. Morgan rolled left, firing from a crouch, her shots methodical, not rage, just precision. Townsend moved in from the opposite side, cutting down another attacker with clean efficiency. The firefight lasted seconds, but the noise felt eternal, the roar of redemption and regret colliding. Then silence. Only the soft crackle of cooling engines and Keller's shallow breathing. Morgan sprinted forward, sliding beside him. Blood spread across his chest, dark against the frost. He gasped once. Did he believe it? She pressed a hand to his wound. He did. Keller's eyes fluttered. Then it was worth it. Morgan held his gaze until it faded, then closed his eyes gently. Townsend approached, checking the perimeter. 3 down, Petrov's gone. She rose slowly, scanning the tree line. He won't run far. He needs confirmation the upload succeeded. Townsend frowned. How do we track him? Morgan looked toward the SUV. We don't. We let him track us. She moved to the back of the vehicle, yanked open the rear door. Inside, equipment cases, encrypted comms, and a satellite terminal still active. On its screen, coordinates blinked. Transmission pending. She smiled grimly. He was uploading live telemetry if I piggyback the signal. We get his location, Townsend finished. Exactly. She slid behind the terminal, fingers flying over the interface. The Russian code was elegant, ruthless, encryption loops nested inside decoy shells, but Morgan had always understood patterns better than people. A few keystrokes later, she whispered, "Got you." A set of coordinates blinked onto the screen, 35, 72 degrees N, 84, 91 degrees W. Townsend leaned over her shoulder. That's the old airfield. Morgan nodded slowly. Petrov's fallback point, probably his exfil. Townsend exhaled. We need to move. She looked down at Keller's body. We take him with us. He deserves better than being left here. Townsend nodded, grabbing a blanket from the SUV to cover him. Morgan glanced back toward the dark forest. Somewhere out there, Petrov was retreating, methodical, patient, certain he'd won again. Not this time. They drove the captured SUV with the headlights off, cutting through the back roads toward the airfield. The forest thinned into open terrain, the faint outline of hangars rising in the distance. The dashboard clock read 03:12. Townsend kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting on his rifle. You realize this is off-book. If command finds us here, they'll call it treason. Morgan's gaze stayed fixed on the horizon. Then we make it count before they catch up. He studied her profile, calm, focused, eyes reflecting dashboard light like distant storms. You still carry it, don't you? What happened over there? She didn't answer right away. Some ghosts don't die when the shooting stops. They just wait for you to come back. Townsend nodded. Then maybe this time you bury one. She almost smiled. As they neared the perimeter, the road ended in a stretch of cracked tarmac. The airfield loomed, rusted hangars, shattered windows, the ghost of Cold War infrastructure. But someone had been here recently. Floodlights hummed faintly, and a small transport plane sat on the runway, engines idling. "Petrov's ride," Morgan said. "Townsend parked behind a derelict jeep and killed the engine. We go silent from here." They disembarked, moving low through the tall grass. The smell of fuel mixed with the damp earth, the sound of distant engines masking their footsteps. Morgan raised her scope, 4 hostiles near the plane, 2 at the hangar doors, and Petrov standing near the cargo ramp speaking into a handset. Townsend leaned close. 6 total. 7, she corrected. Look, roof. A glint of metal caught her eye. Another sniper. Townsend muttered, always one more. "I'll handle him." She adjusted her rifle, exhaling slowly. Distance 480 yards. Wind left to right 4 knots. The shot whispered through the fog, barely a sound. The sniper folded instantly. Townsend's voice was soft. "That's 1 ghost buried." Morgan's focus didn't waver. 6 left. They split, Townsend flanking right, Morgan circling left. Each movement mirrored years of instinct, 2 halves of an old rhythm rediscovered under fire. She crept behind a supply crate near the hangar, catching fragments of Petrov's conversation in Russian. "Upload confirmed. Yes, nightshade active." Her pulse slowed. He still believed Keller's signal was genuine. Then Petrov said a name that froze her blood. "Hayes." She leaned closer, every nerve alive. "Hayes will delay the lockdown until I'm gone. He understands the stakes." Morgan's mind raced. Hayes helping him. No, not Hayes. Not the man who'd called her reckless, who'd exiled her for breaking orders. But the voice in her head whispered the question she didn't want to ask. What if exile was the point? If Petrov had compromised Hayes, then Afghanistan hadn't been failure, it had been cover. Townsend's voice hissed softly through comms. "Position set." "Wait," she breathed. "Change of plan, we take Petrov alive." "Alive?" "He's the only one who can prove what happened, and he's connected to Hayes." Townsend hesitated. "You trust him to talk?" "I trust leverage." He exhaled. "All right, on your go." Morgan moved. The first guard turned just in time to see the flash of her knife, silent, precise. She caught his fall, lowered him gently. 2 more at the ramp, both went down to Townsend's suppressed bursts. Petrov spun, startled but composed, his pistol rising. "Don't," Morgan said sharply, stepping into the light. His eyes narrowed, recognition dawning. "Morgan Reed, I thought you retired." She leveled her weapon. "You thought wrong." He smiled, the kind that never reached the eyes. "You cost me good men once. Do you plan to finish the job?" "Not yet," she said. "You're coming with us." He laughed softly. "And if I refuse?" Townsend appeared from the side, rifle trained. "Then I stop asking." For the first time, Petrov's calm cracked just slightly. Morgan stepped closer. "You built Nightshade to blind nations, but you didn't just betray mine, you betrayed yours. You're a ghost no one wants." His lips twitched. "Perhaps, but ghosts are hard to kill." He moved suddenly, drawing a small detonator from his coat. Morgan fired, a single shot through his wrist. The device fell, sparking as it hit the ground. Townsend kicked it away. "No more tricks." Petrov staggered, clutching his bleeding hand. Morgan pressed the barrel of her pistol to his chest. "Who's feeding you intel from command?" He smiled through pain. "You already know." "Hayes." Silence, the kind that confessed more than words. Morgan's voice dropped to a whisper. "Why?" Petrov's smile was almost kind. "Because even patriots can be predictable." He wanted control. I offered clarity. Townsend's jaw tightened. Translation, you bought him. "Not bought," Petrov corrected softly. "Aligned." Before they could press further, headlights flared on the far side of the airfield. Vehicles. Townsend cursed. Reinforcements. Morgan dragged Petrov backward toward the hangar. Move. Bullets tore through the air, sparking against metal. Townsend covered their retreat, returning precise bursts. Inside, they ducked behind a stack of fuel drums. Morgan forced Petrov down. Who's coming? Your people, he said with a faint laugh. Hayes sent them. Outside, the unmistakable sound of American Humvees filled the night. Townsend looked at her. He's right, those are ours. Morgan's heart pounded. Then we just became the enemy. She looked at Petrov, the man who had ruined her life and now held the key to clearing it. And for the first time, she realized the real war wasn't between nations. It was between truth and the stories people chose to believe. Why did the sound of rescue always feel like betrayal? The roar of engines filled the airfield, Humvees grinding over cracked tarmac, floodlights piercing the fog like spears. The rhythmic clatter of boots followed, synchronized, practiced. American voices barked orders through the night. Secure the perimeter, move in pairs, no one fires unless commanded. Morgan crouched behind the stack of fuel drums, pistol ready, eyes scanning every shadow beyond the hangar's broken windows. Townsend's breathing was steady beside her, the calm of a man who'd made peace with chaos long ago. Petrov sat between them, his hands bound with paracord, his mouth curved in that faint, infuriating smile. Your own men, he murmured. How poetic. Morgan ignored him. We can't fight them, not like this. Townsend checked his rifle. Then what's the plan? Truth, she said simply, even if they don't want to hear it. He glanced toward her, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. You really think Hayes will listen? She didn't answer. The question wasn't rhetorical, it was a wound. Outside, a loudspeaker crackled. This is Colonel James Hayes. Morgan Reed, Michael Townsend, you are surrounded. Lay down your weapons and step out slowly with your hands raised. The voice hadn't changed, clipped, authoritative, self-assured. It carried the same weight it had years ago when he'd told her she was finished. Morgan exhaled slowly. He's here in person. Means he wants control of the story, Townsend muttered. Or to erase it himself, Petrov added quietly. Townsend backhanded him, not out of anger but to silence him. You talk when we ask. Morgan peered through a gap in the metal wall. Outside, dozens of soldiers fanned out across the tarmac, their movements disciplined but uncertain. They weren't attacking. Not yet. Hayes wanted a clean resolution, his version of order. Morgan's earpiece buzzed faintly, a broken whisper. Reed, you copy. Her chest tightened. Bill. Static crackled. They locked comms. Wallace tried, but Hayes shut her out. You're alone out there. Copy that, she whispered. Townsend glanced at her. That's comforting. She smirked faintly. Never said I liked comfort. Then she stood. Townsend caught her arm. What are you doing? Ending this. You walk out there, he'll shoot you before you finish a sentence. Maybe, but if I stay here, he'll burn this hangar to hide what's inside. Either way, I'm done hiding. She pulled her arm free. Cover me if it goes wrong. Townsend hesitated, then nodded once. Always. Morgan holstered her sidearm and stepped toward the open hangar doors, her boots echoing softly against the concrete. The floodlights hit her instantly, bleaching her features in white glare. Dozens of rifles shifted toward her. She raised her hands. Colonel Hayes, she shouted, voice steady, we need to talk. The reply came sharp, commanding. Disarm yourself and surrender. That's your only chance. Not until you hear me. Morgan. She cut him off, her voice slicing through the air. You're being played. A pause. Then Hayes himself emerged from behind the lead Humvee. His uniform was immaculate, his face harder, older, but those same cold, calculating eyes met hers. I should have known you couldn't stay out of trouble, he said. Trouble finds me, sir. You disobeyed a direct command, again, and saved 12 men who would have died waiting for your orders. His jaw tightened. You think you know what's happening here? I know Petrov's inside that hangar, she said, loud enough for his men to hear. And I know he's been feeding you intel, using Nightshade to blind our defenses. A murmur rippled through the soldiers. Hayes's expression didn't change, but his tone sharpened. Step back inside, now. You can end this, she pressed. Turn him in, clear your name, or you can bury it like you buried Afghanistan. That hit him. For the first time, he hesitated. Then he said softly, You don't know what you're talking about. I do. Petrov was the ghost in my scope 3 years ago, the one who walked away. You covered it up. Hayes's voice dropped to a dangerous calm. Stand down, Reed. I won't. The silence stretched. Then his eyes flicked past her toward the hangar. Townsend, he called. You're Delta, you know the chain of command, you know what to do. Townsend's voice came from the shadows. Funny thing, sir, chain of command's not worth much when the links are rotten. Hayes's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. Yeah, Townsend said softly, but at least it's ours. Morgan stepped forward another pace. You let him in, didn't you? Petrov. You thought you could control him, use his network to monitor global threats, but you didn't realize he was controlling you. Hayes's jaw flexed. You think I wanted this. You think anyone up there listens when you tell them the system's broken. Then why hide it? She demanded. Why let good people die to protect it? His eyes flickered just once, and she saw something human in the shadow of his anger. Regret, maybe, or fear. Because sometimes, he said quietly, truth doesn't save nations. It tears them apart. Morgan's voice softened, and lies save no one. Hayes's hand twitched toward his sidearm, then froze as a gunshot split the air. Not from his men. From behind Morgan. The bullet whined past her shoulder, embedding in the Humvee beside Hayes. Every rifle turned toward the hangar. Petrov's voice carried from inside, dripping amusement. Ah, the family reunion. Morgan spun. Petrov stood just inside the doorway, one hand still bound, the other holding a sidearm he'd stolen from a fallen guard. Stop, she shouted. Don't. He fired again, not at her, but at the SUV behind Hayes. The gas tank ruptured, flames erupting in a thunderous roar. Chaos exploded, soldiers scattered, smoke rolled across the airfield. Morgan dove for cover, dragging Petrov down with her. He laughed through the coughing. You Americans always so dramatic. Townsend grabbed him, wrenching the pistol free. You just signed your death warrant. Petrov grinned. So did you. Morgan looked up through the smoke, Hayes, shouting orders, rallying his men. Firelight flickered across his face. And for the first time she saw something break there, confusion, guilt, the unraveling of control. Townsend pulled her behind a steel crate. We need to move before this whole place goes up. Not without him, she said, nodding at Petrov. Reed, we can't drag him through that crossfire. We don't have to, we just need his confession. She grabbed the comm unit from Petrov's coat, still active, still transmitting. The signal light blinked. Townsend's eyes widened. That's live. Was, she said, now it's ours. She pressed the transmit button, holding it to Petrov's mouth. Tell them, Victor. Tell them who you've been working with. He smiled faintly. You think confession matters. Maybe not to you, she said, tightening her grip, but it matters to everyone listening. Hayes's voice echoed faintly through the chaos. Reed, drop it. She ignored him. Say it, Petrov, say his name. He looked at her, almost pitying. You still believe truth redeems. Her eyes hardened. No, but it stops men like you from writing the ending. For a moment the world went still, fire crackling, sirens wailing, smoke swirling like ghosts. Then Petrov spoke. Colonel James Hayes, he said softly, the man who traded duty for control. The words hung in the air, carried by static, recorded, transmitted, undeniable. Morgan released the button. That's enough. Townsend stared at her. You think command will believe it? They'll have to. Behind them, Hayes's voice roared again, closer now, furious. You don't understand what you've done. Morgan turned as he emerged through the smoke, pistol raised, eyes blazing with a mix of anger and betrayal. I tried to protect this country, he shouted. You protected yourself, she shouted back. He hesitated just long enough for the truth to cut through. You think they'll thank you for this? You think they'll see you as a hero? She lowered her weapon slightly. I don't need to be a hero, sir. I just need to be honest. A beat, then he fired. The shot rang out sharp, final. But it was Morgan who fell. Townsend had moved instinctively, intercepting the bullet. It caught him high in the shoulder. He staggered but didn't go down, returning fire. Hayes fell backward, struck once, his pistol clattering to the ground. The silence that followed was heavy, not relief, not victory, just consequence. Morgan dropped beside Townsend, pressing her hand to his wound. You're okay, stay with me. He grinned weakly. You always did have lousy luck. She almost laughed, voice trembling. You took the bullet for me. Call it bad aim. She tore fabric from her sleeve, pressing it tighter. We'll get out. Bill will send. Reed, his voice softened. You did it, you ended it. Her throat tightened. Not yet. He reached for her hand, gripping it once before the strength faded. And then in the firelight, she felt his hand go still. Morgan sat there for a long time, not moving, not breathing, the roar of flames drowning everything but the sound of her own heart breaking. When she finally rose, the dawn light was breaking over the horizon, thin, gray, fragile. Hayes lay motionless beside the wreckage. Petrov knelt in restraints, silent now, his smile gone. Morgan stared at the burning airfield, the smoke curling upward like prayers. She spoke softly, almost to herself. Sometimes, duty isn't about orders or medals. It's about the truth you can still stand to live with. She holstered her weapon, turned toward the rising sun, and started walking, the last ghost leaving the battlefield. How quiet could victory sound before it felt like defeat? The dawn came gray and cold, a colorless light that didn't warm anything it touched. Smoke from the airfield hung low, rolling across the hills like fog too heavy to lift. Morgan sat on the tailgate of an emergency truck, her hands still shaking though she wasn't cold anymore. Her uniform was torn, streaked with soot and dried blood that wasn't all her own. Paramedics moved around her in the rhythm of aftermath, organized chaos. Soldiers in hazmat gear cordoned off the wreckage. Drones circled overhead, recording the ruins of what would soon be rewritten as an incident. No one looked at her. Not really. They avoided her eyes the way people do when they don't know which story to believe. Colonel Amanda Wallace approached, coat pulled tight against the wind. Her face was drawn, her posture straight, her gaze steady as ever. You shouldn't even be here, she said softly. You were never officially deployed. Morgan looked out toward the burning hangar. Neither were the men who died. Wallace sighed, her breath visible in the chill. Hayes is dead. Petrov's in custody. Command's already assembling an inquiry. An inquiry, Morgan repeated, the word tasting bitter. Not a confession, not accountability, just damage control. Wallace didn't deny it. The recording you transmitted went straight to Strategic Command. They can't bury it, not completely, but they'll spin it. Say Petrov infiltrated through a rogue cell. Say Hayes acted alone. And what will they say about me? Wallace hesitated. That depends on how quiet you're willing to be. Morgan turned toward her, eyes sharp. I didn't come back from the dead to disappear again. I know, Wallace's tone softened. But you're a liability now, Reed. You've embarrassed too many people. There's already talk of a forced psychiatric evaluation, operational trauma, residual guilt. It's how they'll explain you away. Morgan almost laughed. You think I care about my reputation? I think you care about the truth, and I'm telling you truth won't survive their paperwork. They stood there in silence, watching the smoke rise. Somewhere in the distance, a helicopter lifted Petrov's handcuffed form toward the horizon. Morgan finally spoke, Townsend. Wallace's eyes softened. He didn't make it. Morgan closed her eyes briefly. He deserved better. He got it, Wallace said. You finished what he started. But the words didn't feel like comfort. They felt like a verdict. Morgan looked down at her trembling hands. He took a bullet meant for me. Wallace nodded. Maybe he knew something you don't. Morgan frowned. What's that? That sometimes, the only way to live with the past is to leave someone else the future. The next 48 hours blurred into fluorescent light and debriefing rooms. Endless questions asked by people who'd never seen a battlefield, only paperwork about one. Morgan sat under the white hum of an overhead lamp, every detail of her story dissected, doubted, sanitized. Did Colonel Hayes ever directly admit to colluding with the foreign operative? He didn't need to, she answered flatly. Petrov confirmed it over a live comm channel. You have the recording. Records show partial corruption of the file, the investigator said, eyes neutral. The transmission was interrupted. Morgan leaned forward, interrupted conveniently. The man didn't flinch. We're only interested in facts, Ms. Reed. She smiled, slow, humorless. No, you're interested in narratives. Hours later, she found herself in another room, this one smaller, quieter, with Wallace waiting. They're not going to clear you, Wallace said bluntly. Not publicly. I didn't expect them to. But they will keep you off the record. That's the compromise. Morgan looked at her. You mean, make me disappear without technically erasing me? Exactly. Morgan laughed softly, the sound brittle. Perfect symmetry. The soldier who disobeyed orders and the command that disobeyed its conscience. Wallace leaned forward. You think I like this any more than you do? Hayes wasn't just a superior officer. He was a mentor, a friend. I still can't believe. That he crossed the line, Morgan interrupted gently, or that the line ever existed. Wallace's silence said enough. Morgan stood, packing slowly. When I joined, I thought honor meant following orders. Then I learned honor sometimes means breaking them. Wallace watched her for a long moment. You know, your father once said almost the same thing. Morgan paused. You knew my father. Everyone knew Thomas Reed, Wallace said quietly. He saved lives because he refused to wait for permission. It cost him command, but it bought him respect. Morgan looked away. He died for it. Yes, Wallace said, but people still remember his name. That's something. Morgan turned back. Names fade, ma'am, only choices echo. Wallace smiled faintly. Then echo loudly, Reed, because after today the world won't hear your name again. 2 weeks later, the official story broke. Base exercise turns deadly, foreign saboteurs neutralized. There was no mention of Nightshade, no mention of Keller, no mention of Hayes's betrayal or Townsend's sacrifice. The only line that mattered was buried near the end. Former officer Morgan Reed is currently under medical review following psychological trauma sustained during the event. And just like that, she was erased again. She sat in a small apartment outside Fayetteville, the blinds drawn, a mug of cold coffee forgotten on the table. Her rifle lay dismantled on a workbench, not as a weapon, but as something she couldn't quite let go of. The walls were bare except for one thing, a photo of her team in Afghanistan before it all went wrong. Everyone smiling, everyone alive. Her phone buzzed once, an encrypted message from an unknown number. They can bury stories, not witnesses. W. Wallace. Morgan stared at it for a long moment before deleting it. Some ghosts needed distance. She walked to the window. Outside, the rain was falling again, slow, rhythmic, cleansing. For the first time in years, it didn't feel like punishment. That night, she dreamed of the jungle. Not the real one, not the humid nightmare where 12 seals had begged for rescue, but something quieter, a dream built from memory and mercy. In it, she wasn't aiming through a scope or calculating distance. She was just sitting beneath a tree, listening to rain on leaves, feeling the earth steady beneath her. Townsend was there somewhere behind her, his voice soft. "You did it, Morgan. You stopped running." She didn't turn around. "Then why do I still feel like I lost?" "Because you cared." She looked up, the sky opening into light. When she woke, the dawn outside was real again. Weeks passed, the world moved on. Petrov was extradited officially to an undisclosed facility, unofficially to silence. No trial, no closure, just another classified ghost file. Wallace retired for personal reasons. And Morgan Reed, the woman who had broken rules to save lives, became the footnote no one cited. But not everyone forgot. One morning an envelope arrived. No return address. Inside, a single photo, Townsend and Morgan, taken years earlier in Afghanistan, both smiling in that rare, quiet peace before deployment. On the back, someone had written in faded ink, "The ones who act don't need medals." She traced the words with her thumb, then slipped the photo into her jacket pocket. Later that day, she drove north, no destination, no orders. Just the road, the hum of tires, and the slow, unfamiliar pulse of freedom. As miles blurred under the tires, her thoughts circled the same truth she'd fought to avoid. War doesn't end when the gunfire stops. It ends when the silence becomes bearable. And she wasn't there yet. But maybe one day. She pulled over by a quiet overlook, the sun melting gold over the treetops. For a long time she just stood there, breathing, really breathing. The horizon stretched endless, the kind of distance that asked nothing of her but honesty. She whispered to the wind, half prayer, half promise. For them, always for them. And the wind, maybe out of mercy, maybe out of memory, whispered back. That night, news outlets flashed brief coverage of a former intelligence officer found responsible for leaked audio implicating foreign interference. They didn't name her. They didn't have to. Somewhere deep inside the Pentagon, a single file marked Reed. Morgan E. changed its classification from active investigation to closed archive. And yet beneath that bureaucratic closure, one final note was added, short, almost poetic. Operative demonstrated exceptional judgment in unauthorized conditions. Mission outcome successful. Moral inconvenient. A week later, Wallace stood in front of a closed office door at Fort Bragg, a sealed file in her hand. She placed it inside a drawer marked inactive personnel, hesitated, then added a small card on top. 3 words handwritten. Sometimes silence speaks. Far from there, at a truck stop somewhere near the Tennessee border, Morgan Reed sipped burnt coffee and listened to the hum of the open highway. Her hair was longer now, her face softer. The soldier had faded from her reflection, but the eyes, calm, alert, haunted, still carried every battlefield she'd ever survived. A radio played faintly in the background, a local station reporting nothing that mattered. Morgan smiled faintly, tucked a folded photo back into her pocket, and started her truck. No medals, no headlines, no closure. Just motion. And for the first time, that was enough. Soft closing narration tone. Sometimes the world forgets the ones who kept it standing. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts and disappears. How long could peace last when the world forgot what you'd done to earn it? The diner was half empty, the kind of roadside place that smelled like burnt coffee and tired dreams. Rain tapped gently against the glass, steady and unhurried. Morgan sat in the corner booth, reading a folded newspaper someone had left behind. The ink had already started to smudge from humidity, but the headline was still clear enough to sting. Cyberattack on federal network under investigation. No breach confirmed. No breach. The same phrase they'd used to bury the truth 3 years ago. She set the paper down and stared out at the gray morning. Somewhere beyond the parking lot, trucks rumbled past, carrying lives that didn't need saving. She'd almost convinced herself she was one of them. Almost. A phone buzzed in her jacket pocket, the prepaid one she never gave out. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. A voice she hadn't heard in months, older, raspier, but unmistakable. "Reed." "Bill," she said quietly, "you retired, remember?" "Yeah," he said, "so did you. How's that working out?" Morgan smiled faintly. "Depends on the day." "Then I'll make this one worse." She leaned back, eyes narrowing. "Talk." "I've been doing contract work. Civilian cybersecurity consulting. One of my teams intercepted chatter on the dark web, someone selling access keys to an old satellite uplink. The encryption pattern looked familiar." Her pulse slowed. "How familiar?" Bill sighed. "Nightshade familiar." The diner suddenly felt smaller, the walls pressing in. That system was destroyed. "Officially," he said, "but nothing digital ever dies. Someone recovered fragments enough to rebuild part of the core. Whoever it is, they're not amateurs." Morgan rubbed her temple. "Who's running the operation?" "That's the problem, we don't know, but they're calling themselves Echo Division. Ring any bells?" She froze. The name was like an old scar pressed too hard. Echo Division was Hayes's contingency program, a ghost unit built to operate off-book. It was supposed to be dissolved after his death. "Well," Bill said dryly, "looks like the ghosts didn't get the memo." Morgan exhaled. "Where?" "Atlanta. Private facility disguised as a logistics firm, Helios Freight. My contact says something big's happening there tomorrow night. And Reed, they know your name." Her grip tightened on the phone. "You sure?" "I saw the file myself. Morgan Reed, flagged as person of interest. Someone's rewriting your history again." "Then I'll write it back." Bill's tone softened. "You don't owe them anything, Morgan." "I owe the truth," she said quietly. "Truth doesn't pay well. It's the only thing that sleeps at night." She ended the call before he could argue. Outside, the rain had stopped. The world felt heavier, like the calm before another war no one had declared. By the time she reached Atlanta, the city lights were already bleeding into the night. Helios Freight looked exactly like what it pretended to be: fenced lot, warehouses and trucks lined in perfect rows. No guards visible, no cameras obvious. Which meant there were plenty. Morgan sat in a borrowed sedan 2 blocks away, watching through binoculars. The fence line had 2 weak spots, a drainage gap on the south perimeter and a delivery bay left unsecured for night operations. She chose the latter. Old habits returned as muscle memory. She moved low and silent through the dark, slipping past motion sensors with careful timing. Inside, the air smelled of oil and ozone, too clean for a warehouse. She followed the hum of power deeper into the facility. Beneath the noise of machinery, she heard voices. "Upload at 68%. Once it hits full sync, we'll have real-time data routing." Another voice, calm, precise, chillingly familiar. "Ensure the trace masks are active. I want zero visibility on the network until the release window." Morgan's breath caught. Viktor Petrov. She hadn't seen his face since the night at the airfield, since the firelight and handcuffs and the unspoken truth between them. He was supposed to be buried in a classified black site, forgotten like her. And yet there he was, older, thinner, but still commanding the room like a man who'd outlived his sentence. She crouched behind a crate, heart steady, eyes tracking the reflection of his face in the polished steel. He was surrounded by 6 men, mercenaries, not soldiers. Their gear was mismatched but professional. At the far end of the room, servers hummed, their screens filled with cascading code. Morgan's eyes darted to the monitor nearest her. The header read, Nightshade Ecosystem Restore, 72%. So it was true. Nightshade wasn't dead, it was evolving. Petrov was rebuilding it under a new flag, not for nations, but for whoever could pay for silence. Morgan whispered under her breath, "You just don't stop, do you?" A voice answered from behind her, "Neither do you." She spun, gun drawn, but the barrel that met hers was already there. Bill Hargrove stood in the shadows, wearing civilian tactical gear, his expression unreadable. "Before you shoot," he said calmly, "you might want to hear me out." Her voice was ice. "You sold me out." He sighed. "I didn't sell anything. I'm here because I thought you'd come. Petrov reached out to me weeks ago." Morgan's grip tightened. "You're working with him." "Against him," Bill said. "But it's complicated. The agency that buried him also buried me. I thought if I played along, I could find out who was funding this." "Who is?" He hesitated. "Private investors, defense contractors, the same people who funded Hayes's shadow program. They want Nightshade decentralized global access. No flags, no borders. Which means no accountability." He nodded grimly. "Exactly." Morgan glanced back toward the lab. Petrov was still giving orders, oblivious to their presence. "What's the plan?" she asked. Bill exhaled. "I planted a failsafe in the core systems. Manual trigger. One shot disables everything permanently." "And what's the catch?" He met her eyes. "It's inside the data vault, and they've rigged it with biometric locks keyed to Petrov. So we need him alive. For a few minutes at least." Morgan holstered her weapon. "Then let's finish what the government couldn't." They moved in tandem, 2 ghosts retracing old instincts. Bill created a distraction, shutting down one of the secondary power grids. The lights flickered, alarms chirped, and half the mercenaries split off to investigate. Morgan took her moment. She slipped through the shadows, crossed the floor, and closed in on Petrov's flank. The old Russian turned at the faintest sound, too slow. Her pistol pressed against the base of his skull. "You're hard to kill, Petrov." He didn't flinch. "You've tried before." "Not hard enough." She grabbed his wrist, yanking the console ID chip from his glove. "You're coming with me." "Ah," he murmured, smiling faintly. "You still believe in capture." "Some of us still believe in justice." He chuckled softly. "And yet here you are, breaking into a government-sanctioned operation you don't understand." "Government-sanctioned," she echoed. "You think I escaped prison," he said. "No, my dear, I was released." The words hit harder than any bullet. Morgan froze. "By who?" "You already know." Before she could respond, a shout erupted from across the room. "Intruders, East Bay." Gunfire followed. Bill, pinned down behind machinery. Morgan spun, dragging Petrov with her toward the vault door. Bullets ricocheted off steel as she keyed in the access code using Petrov's chip. The door hissed open. "Inside," she ordered. He obeyed too easily. The vault was cold and sterile, filled with humming servers and a single control terminal glowing with the Nightshade interface. The fail-safe was there, a small, circular device wired into the system core. Bill's voice crackled over comms. "You in?" "Inside," Morgan said. "Petrov secured." "Then finish it." She stepped toward the console, but Petrov's voice stopped her. "Before you destroy it, tell me something," he said softly. "Why did you come back?" She glared at him. "Because you never stopped." He smiled. "No, I mean really, you had peace. Why throw it away?" Morgan's jaw tightened. "Peace built on lies isn't peace, it's sleepwalking." "Then wake up," he said, stepping closer. You think you're fighting for truth, but truth is just power's mirror. Break it and all you see is yourself. She raised her pistol. I'm fine with that. He smiled again, almost proud. Then pull the trigger. And she did. But not at him. The bullet shattered the control unit. Sparks erupted, alarms blared, the entire system groaning as power surged through the core. The vault lights flickered red, FAILSAFE engaged. Outside, explosions echoed as circuits overloaded. The facility trembled. Bill's voice came through, coughing. You did it. Everything's going dark. Morgan grabbed Petrov by the collar, dragging him toward the door. You're coming with us. He shook his head, calm even in collapse. No, Morgan, this is where ghosts belong. He tore free, slamming a hand against a control switch. The vault's blast door began to close. Morgan lunged, too late. The steel barrier sealed between them. Through the small glass panel, Petrov smiled one last time. Goodbye, soldier. The vault imploded seconds later. The shockwave threw Morgan backward into Bill's arms. They hit the floor as fire rolled through the corridor. He pulled her up, blood streaking down his temple. You okay? He asked. She nodded, breath ragged. We need to move. They stumbled through the smoke-filled hallway, emerging into the open night as the facility collapsed behind them. Sirens wailed in the distance. Bill dropped to his knees, coughing hard. You stopped him again. Morgan looked back at the inferno. No, she said quietly. I stopped the machine, but not the people who'll build another. He nodded, grim and tired. Then maybe next time someone else will. She looked down at him, at the mentor who taught her to aim straight, speak less, and think twice. Get out of here, she said. You've done enough. He managed a faint smile. That's the thing about enough, Reed. It never feels like it. She helped him to his feet, and together they vanished into the night, just silhouettes swallowed by smoke and silence. Hours later, Morgan stood on a bridge outside the city, watching the flames in the distance. The reflection burned orange on the river below. Her voice was quiet, almost prayer-like. You can't kill the idea of control, but you can keep fighting it. She reached into her pocket, pulled out the small dog tag Townsend had given her years ago, tarnished, cracked, still heavy with meaning. She tossed it into the river. It sank without a sound, and for the first time, she didn't feel its weight. Soft voiceover ending tone. Maybe peace isn't the end of war. Maybe it's just the courage to live after it. And maybe that's all she ever was, a soldier who refused to stay buried. What happens when the war ends but the silence does? 2 weeks had passed since the Helios explosion. 2 weeks since the headlines briefly flickered, then vanished. Warehouse fire in Atlanta, industrial accident under review. No names, no questions, no truth. Morgan Reed existed again only as a rumor, a ghost whispered about in the darker corners of intelligence chatter. Some said she died in the blast. Others said she'd gone rogue. Both versions suited her. She lived off the grid now, in a cabin tucked between ridges where radio signals died before reaching the valley floor. No uniforms, no weapons, no mirrors. The nights were long, the kind that made memory louder than the wind. Sometimes she heard Townsend's voice in the rustle of trees, sometimes Bill's laughter in the static of her radio. And sometimes, though she hated to admit it, she thought she heard Petrov's voice too, soft and amused, whispering, "You can't bury what lives in code." Because he was right. Even though the Helios mainframe had burned, fragments of Nightshade still floated in the digital ether, unclaimed, undying like a virus waiting for a new host. Morgan had seen the signs, quiet anomalies, encrypted pings, backdoor traces, small, scattered but familiar. Echo Division wasn't gone, it had just changed faces. One evening, as rain swept the valley, her radio crackled not with noise, but with intent. Morgan Reed, you don't know me, but I know you. Her pulse stilled. The voice was female, calm, mid-30s, clipped with professional restraint. You were right about Petrov, the voice continued, but you didn't finish what he started, and now others have. Morgan set down her cup of coffee, reaching for her field transceiver. Identify yourself. I can't, not yet, but I'm part of what's left of Echo, and I'm giving you a chance to walk away. Morgan's tone stayed even. People like you don't make offers, they make threats. This isn't a threat, the voice said. It's mercy. You're marked, Reed. Someone paid a lot to make sure you don't keep breathing. Morgan smiled faintly. They'll have to earn it. Then you should know who signed the contract. The voice paused, just long enough to make the air heavier. Wallace. The name hit like a cold slap. Morgan leaned forward. You're lying. Am I? She's in deep, Reed. The ones who buried Hayes and Petrov are cleaning house. You're the last witness. She's covering her tracks. The radio went dead. Morgan sat there for a long moment, the rain hammering harder against the roof. Colonel Amanda Wallace, the one person who defended her, who called her by her name when everyone else called her liability. Could it be true? She looked out at the rain-dark forest, her reflection faint in the window, and realized she already knew the answer. 2 days later, she was back on the road. She drove an old Jeep, the kind that rattled over every pothole, the kind no satellite would ever bother to track. Northbound, toward D.C. Toward closure. The Capitol didn't look like power from a distance. It looked tired marble faded by time, lights flickering like old intentions. Morgan parked 4 blocks away, pulled her hood low, and walked. Wallace's office was on the 8th floor of a defense consultancy, Trident Systems, LLC, a polished name for another invisible war machine. Morgan entered through the maintenance corridor, old habits quiet, unseen. By the time she reached the private elevator, she'd already memorized the building's layout. 2 guards, no cameras in the west stairwell, no alarms on the back exit. She stopped at the top landing. Her heart didn't race, it never did anymore. When the elevator doors opened, Amanda Wallace was waiting. She didn't look surprised. I thought it might be you, Wallace said softly. You always did prefer the hard way. Morgan stepped forward slowly. Then make it easy. Tell me you didn't do it. Wallace sighed. You should have stayed gone. That's not an answer. Neither is this conversation. Her tone was calm, but her hand hovered near the desk drawer. Morgan noticed, she always noticed. Why, Amanda? Wallace exhaled through her nose, weary. Because the truth doesn't save nations, Morgan. It dismantles them. You think exposing Hayes and Petrov ended corruption. It just exposed the cost of control. Echo was designed to make sure that kind of chaos never happens again. By becoming it, Morgan asked. Wallace's voice broke slightly. By containing it. Morgan shook her head. You justified a virus by calling it a cure. Wallace's expression softened, almost pity. You've always been too moral for this world. And you stopped being moral the second you decided who got to live in silence. Wallace's jaw clenched. They'll come for you, Morgan, not because you're wrong, but because you're right in the wrong century. Then let them come. Wallace smiled sadly. I wish I believed you could win. Morgan's eyes flicked once to the drawer. You reaching for a gun or a file? A file, Wallace said quietly, and pulled it open. Inside was a small black drive. She placed it gently on the desk between them. What's this? Insurance, Wallace said. Petrov's last transfer, everything he sold, everyone who bought. If Echo Division wants me dead, this is why. Morgan hesitated. Why give it to me? Because you'll do what I can't. You'll make them listen. Morgan looked at the drive, then back at her. And if I do? Wallace smiled faintly. Then maybe I finally made a good mistake. The sound came first, the faint hiss of a suppressed shot through glass. Wallace's eyes widened. A small red bloom appeared on her blouse. Morgan dove forward as another bullet cracked through the window. She pulled Wallace to the floor, searching the skyline. Rooftop sniper, distance 600 yards, angle East Tower. Morgan drew her pistol, firing 3 quick rounds through the shattered window, not to kill, but to disrupt. Then silence. Wallace's breathing was shallow. "You were right," she whispered. "It never ends." "Stay with me," Morgan said, pressing her hand to the wound. But Wallace's gaze had already gone distant. "Bill once told me, sometimes silence speaks. You made it scream." Her hand fell still. Morgan closed her eyes. "I'm sorry." "No," a faint voice in her memory echoed, her father's. "Never apologize for doing what they were too afraid to do." She grabbed the drive, pocketed it, and vanished down the fire stairs before the building's alarms even triggered. That night she didn't sleep. The drive sat on the motel desk beside her, small and heavy, like a loaded truth. Inside it, she knew, was the map of everything: the buyers, the accounts, the operatives who'd turned corruption into industry. If she released it, the world would fracture. Governments would fall. But if she didn't, Echo would rise again, stronger, smarter, invisible. Her mind played both futures on a loop. Then somewhere deep inside that storm of thought, she heard Townsend's voice, calm, teasing. "You already know what you're going to do, Morgan. You're just hoping someone else will tell you not to." She smiled faintly. "You always saw through me." He chuckled in memory. "No one ever won a war by staying silent." She stared at the drive for a long time, then slipped it into her pocket. Outside, the horizon glowed faintly with the light of another restless dawn. 2 weeks later, a video appeared on secure intelligence channels across the globe. No signature, no metadata, just a voice, steady, low, unmistakably human. Morgan's voice. "For years you've heard about control, security, patriotism. But behind every promise of order stands someone holding the strings. Echo Division, Nightshade, the same ghost under different names. You can call this a betrayal if you want, but the real betrayal is pretending you didn't already know. I'm not asking you to choose sides. I'm asking you to remember that silence serves power, not people. My name is Morgan Reed, and I am not your enemy. I'm the consequence of your comfort." The message spread like fire, copied, translated, reposted, deleted, then resurrected again. Within 24 hours, news agencies were in chaos, governments in denial, and somewhere in a digital corner of the dark web, one phrase began trending among soldiers, journalists, and whistleblowers alike. "Echo the truth." Morgan never saw the aftermath firsthand. By then she was already gone, her cabin abandoned, her name scrubbed from every database that mattered. Some said she'd fled overseas. Some said she'd been killed. Others claimed she was still out there, moving between war zones, watching from the edges. But every few months, encrypted footage appeared online: quiet humanitarian rescues, rogue interference in cyberwar ops, aid drops where governments refused to go. No one ever claimed responsibility. But every operation carried the same hidden signature: a single line of metadata, written in plain code. Silence doesn't win. The wind carried her name less and less with time. And maybe that was the point. Because Morgan Reed was never meant to be remembered, she was meant to remind. Remind the world that one person, standing alone, could still move history, not by shouting, but by refusing to stay quiet when it mattered most. Soft closing voiceover, final scene. "They'll forget my name, and that's fine. Maybe I was never supposed to be remembered. Maybe I was just meant to prove that even the smallest act of truth can outlive the loudest lie." Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts and disappears.